This interview is for information only and should not be considered as investment advice or a recommendation to buy shares in the company featured. Welcome to this Stock Box interview.
Joining us today is Sean Wade, the CEO of Power Metal Resources, following news that the company will be drilling again at Molopo Farms, targeting the T114. That's the highest priority conductor to date from the project. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. Sean, how are you doing?
Hi, Mark. Doing very well indeed, thanks. I'm very excited to be able to talk to you and to shareholders about this announcement.
Indeed, it's always good when an exploration company gets those drills turning. So let's talk about this target then. How was it identified and why was the sort of swift decision made to mobilize the drilling campaign?
Well, that's well. First of all, thanks very much for saying it was a swift decision. I think we've had quite a lot of feedback that suggests that we've taken a long time over this, and that's been that has been very deliberate. Okay, drilling is expensive and it's risky. And not more so than in Botswana, where there is a lot of sand cover, there is no outcropping, and therefore, I think, as most people understand, you're very heavily dependent on geophysical work and other forms of identification, soil sampling, etc. And this makes these projects extremely difficult. And so, what we've done, and I think we've been talking about this a little bit, recently, has been very, very substantial desktop analysis and geophysical analysis of the previous data that we've had to identify this conductor, which I think we've talked about before, and I think we've released some good images of what we're looking at, and that what that work has done essentially has been to de-risk as much as we can this drill program. I mean, drilling, as I said, it's expensive and difficult, and we, no exploration company or junior exploration company certainly has the resources to, just sort of, randomly drill what is a very large area. You've got to get as precise as you can, and we've used really, the best people that are available, some of the best geophysicists in the world to do this work and to get us to this point. So, this is an extremely exciting opportunity, and I really, I know that shareholders care an awful lot about Molopo. It has been and remains one of our very highest priority exploration projects, and we're absolutely determined that we're going to do this program properly and deliver some great news from the results of the program.
Good. Well, I do think it's a fairly swift decision. I mean, you announced the target on, the 6th of October, so it's a couple of months and you're active, and, it's a challenging environment. Drilling is not cheap as well. We know we've been here before with Molopo. You want to make sure you're really getting the planning correct before you go for it. But could you just explain a bit about sort of the actual planned drilling program in terms of, how deep you're going, how long the program's planned to take, your type of drills, or the challenges you may encounter, all these kind of things I'm sure you've considered?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, the first thing to say is in respect to the drills themselves, they're pretty deep. Okay, We're talking about 800 meters of depth, and obviously you've got that, sand cover that I mentioned. So, it's a challenging project, and I think, I don't want to, set sort of too many expectations in terms of, how long it's all going to take, because a lot of it will inevitably change as we go through it. I mean, obviously we hope we don't encounter any technical problems, but we can't obviously rule that out. Assuming that everything goes to plan, I would anticipate that a single hole will take something in the order of 6 weeks, and that the results from that drilling, so in other words, the cores go to the lab for analysis, should take roughly another 8 weeks. Now, it depends how we get on as to how the full extent of the drill program. Obviously, when you start drilling, you're going to get some visual reads on what's being drilled, and clearly that will inform the overall length of the program. Okay, so we're going to start where we think obviously we've got the best chance. We will analyze visually as we go, and then ultimately we will send those samples to the lab. So this is I hope is a Q1 event. I mean, we've talked about starting this in January. There's, obviously we've got the holiday period at the moment. We need to get through that, get started in the new year. And, I'm hoping, obviously, that we can, update as we go. But I think just, to set an expectation of, when are we going to get the full results out of this, and what am I, really sort of, building up to? I would focus people really towards the end of Q1. I mean, that's I think the safest way to think.
Q1. Yeah, indeed. And what's the sort of main objective of the program? I mean, what do you hope to achieve from it? I mean, obviously, a core full of mineralization is the holy grail. But I mean, what would be sort of a successful outcome of this campaign?
Well, you've identified very well in your intro, that we're talking specifically about the T114.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think as we, but I've got the announcement in front of me here. As we said in the announcement this morning, it's a very strong, very steeply dipping and multi-kilometer in length conductor. Okay, this is what's been identified through the desktop work we've done, and obviously also the other drilling and surveys that we've done. Now, what's important here is that, and this is what we've been briefed by the geological team. This is geologically located where you would expect to find accumulations of significant nickel sulfides, specifically within a mafic and ultramafic complex. Now, that's why we're confident in this particular conductor. So it's not just a question of doing a geophysical mapping, seeing a conductor and saying, let's go for it. It's partly that, obviously, but it's also partly overlaying that with the right geological setting to maximize the opportunity. So the objective here is quite simply is to drill that conductor and to what we hope, obviously, and what we've always said and what we've always hoped, and what Paul talked about prior to me joining, is the district scale nickel discovery that we think that this project contains. And that is really simply is the objective. We're looking to make a major commercial discovery, and that's the purpose of this program.
Okay. Well, just a final thought on Molopo before we move on to UEE, the other news this week. Of course, shareholders will probably recall we have sort of perhaps been here before with Molopo and a high priority target there. And of course, it didn't really turn up what was perhaps hoped for, which is exploration. It's the nature of the game. But how will this campaign, do you think, affect the future sort of plans or potential of the project? I know you've talked about joint venture before, perhaps. So, I mean, what are you thinking in terms of this?
Well, I mean, you're absolutely right. This obviously, it's a major project. There have been several iterations, and obviously there's been, expectation that perhaps we might have, got here a bit sooner. And I think, as you quite rightly say, that is the nature of exploration. It's difficult and it's expensive, and it's the outcomes are uncertain, which is why, obviously, the returns that can be made for shareholders in discovery companies can be very substantial. So you're quite right that we've been involved, which is why we've been extremely careful to maximize our opportunity here. I mean, clearly there are no guarantees whatsoever. I mean, that's the whole point. But in order to spend the money and to put it at the forefront of what we're doing in exploration terms, it's clearly been important to make sure we've got the very best chance that we have to make that discovery that we all want. Now, in terms of what the plan is for the project going forward, we have said in the past, and certainly in the recent past, that we have been in discussions. Well, we are in discussions. We have had a number of interested parties, but we're in funny markets. I mean, people need to fund their projects. People want to come along and have a look at it. They need funding to do that, and people need to feel, other potential buyers or partners obviously need to feel confident that they are making a sensible investment of their share capital at the same point in the cycle. Now, the tricky part obviously is to close the gap between what we think we've done, and therefore enough to be able to have a fruitful conversation, and what a potential partner thinks needs to be done in order for them to have a safe investment. And there's always going to be a gap between those two. Now, obviously, the more work we do and the better understanding we have of the project, the more we can close that gap. So, if we make a significant advance here, clearly, what your next step would be. I mean, let's talk obviously hypothetically, okay, and let's not get carried away. But if we were to make a discovery here, the next stage is going to be to move that towards a defined resource. Now, that's obviously a long way away and, a totally separate conversation, but that would require a major capital investment. And, it becomes obviously, a proper development project at that point. Now, to get to that point, obviously, the more work we've done, and as everybody knows, this is our model, the better ability we have to do that. So this is about saying, okay, look, we can't really get the deal we want or the conversation going in quite the direction we want. So let's do some more work, let's de-risk it, and let's, by so doing, drive that forward. And that's, I think that's just simply sensible project management. You're saying, look, if somebody would have come and offered me a great price for this 6 months ago, we probably would have taken it. But if that doesn't happen, okay, right, what do we do? Do we have the resources to further our understanding? Yes, we do. Right, in which case, let's go for it, make a business decision, do the work, and then we can move those conversations on. So it's still, very much the focus on getting a strategic joint venture arrangement to take the project forward from here.
Okay. Well, thank you for that, Sean. Well, let's just catch up on some news earlier in the week. Of course, UEE, that's Uranium Energy Exploration. You've completed a pre-IPO financing, £421,500 there with Tethers. So I wonder if you can just explain that a little bit, give some sort of rationale, because Tethers, people may be familiar with it as it's a space in raising retail, allowing retail to invest in placings, etc. But just explain what the situation here.
Okay. Look, thanks for the opportunity on that. There's a few things here. First of all, just on your first point, this is a major step forward for the planned IPO of UEE, which we've talked about quite a lot. In other words, the partial spin out of some of our uranium assets from the overall Athabasca portfolio into an AIM listed vehicle, which we hope will go into an IPO early in the new year, and that's the current plan. So what this raise allows us to do is to obviously meet some of the listing costs and other corporate costs associated with that, and obviously a little bit in terms of exploration. These are difficult markets to raise money anyway. Anyone will tell you that. To raise money for a pre-IPO where there is no certainty that the IPO actually happens is even harder. So it's a real tribute to the team that we've managed to get this far and exceeded our expectations on what we could raise. We've got some really great investors in that piece. It's not a huge amount of money, but we've got some really good investors there who understand uranium and are really backing this project. And so we're very confident that when we come to do the main raise for the IPO, that we have already a lot of support, and we put ourselves in the best position that we can to get that done, get that onto the market. And it's going to be very important for what we're doing overall in uranium, because if we have a listed vehicle with assets in and around the Athabasca Basin, when we get into conversations with potential partners for the balance of the portfolio, I will have a listed asset on which I can base my pricing for any other deals that I might want to do. So this has got two benefits for Power shareholders. One is a vehicle that we're very confident will go up in price because of the uranium market and the lack of opportunity to invest in it via London. It's number one. But number two, what it will help Power Metal shareholders is to get a better value for the balance of the uranium portfolio that remains within Power. So that's very important. Now, on the Tethers point, look, we've had quite a lot of feedback on this, and I think some people have jumped to a few conclusions as to the nature of Tethers and why we're doing it, and all of that kind of thing. Which is, I think some of that's been a little frustrating, to be honest, because it's important for people, I think, to understand that when you bring a company to market, there are several ways in which you can do that. You can either set up a company from nothing, from completely clean, or you can use a shell that is currently listed, or in this case not listed, that has within it already some of the structural features that you need from a company. Okay, now I'll come on to those features in a moment, but why Tethers specifically? I mean, Tethers actually, or Tethers Financial, I mean, if people look it up, which I know some have, on Companies House, what you'll find is that this company was first incorporated in 1907. So it's genuinely, it's one of one of the UK's sort of old, well, I'm not sure it's the oldest company, one of the oldest companies, but it's a very old company, and it's been through many different iterations, obviously, in 100 plus years of history. Yes, most recently, I think there was a plan to do something as a sort of financial platform or something, but prior to that, I think they sold buttons to haberdashers or something like this. So it's a company that's gone through iterations. Now it's been delisted, so there's no at the moment. Okay, there are some shareholders who obviously have been in it historically. There is no current business activity. I mean, it's a completely dormant shell. It came to us, obviously, in our corporate network as an opportunity to do this, and this has been the plan for, well, certainly before I joined, and it over 2 years. And in fact, as some people will know, I sort of came into the power group through this route. Paul had asked me to help with this uranium IPO, and so that's how I became a director of Tethers. And that's, people will have seen that. Now, why do we want to use a shell that's got already, staff and shareholders and things in it? It's got two crucial elements that are very, very useful for us. Number one, it has a bank account. Okay, now people might think that sounds a little bit trivial. If they do, I would urge them to try and set up a uranium exploration business from scratch and go to a high street bank and ask them for a current account. And I'm telling you, you can't. Okay. Uranium bizarrely raises a sort of an ESG red flag in itself. We all agree that it shouldn't, but nonetheless it does. But exploration companies, their nature of them makes it very, very difficult to get that kind of basic corporate function in place. And it is a very, very important point. So it is preferable to take on a shell which basically has zero cost to us, to have that facility rather than to not, and go through the agony of trying to solve that problem. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, there are something in the order of 240 or so individual shareholders. I mean, when we get to the listing, and I don't want to get to the detail of the cap table, but just roughly speaking, the average position size of those shareholders will be about £600 or so. So they're all pretty small. But what it gives us, obviously, is a distribution network for all of the information and the results, hopefully, that we'll be achieving. It gives a little bit of liquidity to the stock in its early days. I mean, we'll get to how we think about lock-ins and so on, nearer the time. But if you were to list in Canada, which we're not, but if you were to list in Canada, they would insist that you had 200 individual shareholders. In any case, this is a condition. So in other words, it's a desirable thing to have that distribution and that liquidity opportunity. So those two things really between them, make it attractive. Now, people have pulled off their historic accounts and come to all sorts of conclusions. There are some, for example, the current liabilities in Tethers, those refer only to what Power Metal has been doing with UEE. In other words, a seed round of investment where the shares have not yet been issued because they're conditional on the listing, comes up in the accounts as a current liability. Okay, that is 100% UEE. There are some accrued advisor costs, obviously, because we've been working on this for some considerable time, and we're now in a position where we can pay some of those advisors. That obviously accrues in the current liability. So people are sort of coming to the conclusion that this has got lots of historic debt and this is all a problem for power shareholders is wide of the mark. And I would say to anybody, if they want to send me a message and talk about it in detail, I'm very happy to do that. But we've got very good reasons for using this. It's obviously all in full sight of our advisory team, and they've advised us that this is a good idea for the business and the right for it to go through.
Okay. And just finishing off on that point then, so Tethers will effectively be a large shareholder of a new IPO listing, or will Tethers remain private, or be a holder, or will Tethers become the IPO vehicle?
Tethers will become the IPO vehicle, so it will literally be renamed Uranium Energy Exploration PLC.
Okay, and then listed. Yeah.
And then
listed. Okay, great. Well, don't you want to finish off, Sean? Get a slight update on the wider activities at Power. Anything to report on?
Well, I think we're extremely busy, and I'm happy to say that because the market's been in the doldrums, and I think we can't we can't change the market overall, although happy to see the shares have been performing well in the last week or so. But I think what's important really is that we just carry on doing what we're paid to do, which is doing our exploration programs and our corporate activities. So the next thing that we're going to be able to report in exploration terms, hopefully, will be the Tati soil samples, which are currently in the labs. When we have those back, obviously we'll talk about those. UEE, as I mentioned, is in Molopo, two issues for the new year. But I think this chat really nicely summarizes what Power Metal is all about, because here is a high priority exploration project, which is the core of what we do. UEE is a very good example of the incubator model and what we've talked about, and Rick Rule's terms, the merchant banking model working to its full extent, which is doing a spin out IPO and adding value. So these two work streams are really very nicely indicative of the business model and what we're trying to deliver to shareholders. And I'm confident that in both cases we're going to be able to add very substantial value.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for that update today, Sean. If we don't speak before the holidays, have a good Christmas period, and looking forward to continuing to follow the story in 2024. But for now, thank you very much, Sean Wade, CEO of Power Metal Resources.
Thanks, Mark, and a Merry Christmas to you as well.
If you enjoyed this interview, then give us a thumbs up, a like or a retweet. Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Twitter, and hit that notification bell to be the first to know when we release new content. There's loads of great content on our website too, across all our programs at stockboxmedia.com. Thank you for watching.